Howdy folks, I'm Kel Kellogg and it is time to talk about another Northern California fishing destination, and today we're going to talk about one of my all-time favorites. In fact, if I were limited to fishing just one lake for the rest of my life, it would be this lake. I'm talking about Lake Shasta. It's a huge lake. It's California's biggest reservoir. It has 365 miles of shoreline. It has 3 major arms. Heck, it has coves that are bigger than a lot of lakes. It is just a fantastic place to go and explore. It's deep. There's a ton of water out there, over 300 feet deep. All kinds of structure, huge points, huge drop-offs, big rock walls that go on for, a mile or more. It is just the ultimate lake for Northern California anglers, and the fish species match up to the size of the lake. The lake has a population of sturgeon, king salmon, kokanee, rainbow trout, 3 varieties, kamloops, pit rivers, Eagle Lake strain. It has brown trout. It has smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, spotted bass. It has carp, crappie, channel cats. It has everything. Bluegill. It's just a fantastic fishery. And the lake was formed in the 1930s. And if you like reading about history, kind of read about the history of the lake before you hit Shasta, and you'll start seeing some features there. For example, before Shasta was built, there was a copper smelting factory there that was so toxic that it killed all the vegetation around what is now the main body of the lake. And if you're out on the lake in a boat and you look up the gullies, you'll see these wing dams, or actually dams across the little valleys that they built. That was because when the lake formed, there was very little vegetation, and that mud would just, when it rained, it would just come gushing into the lake. So they went up there and they built all these dams to contain that mud, and they're still there. The lake's fully vegetated now, but you can still spot those old dams that were constructed in the 30s and the 40s. That's pretty cool. When the lake is low, it's not low now, it's only down about 30 feet, which is really high for this time of the year. But when the lake drops down to 100 plus feet down, you can see a lot of the original dam building equipment still setting in front of the dam. You can see big derricks and just pieces of huge heavy equipment that they left there and let the water cover up when the lake eventually filled. Underneath the lake, in fact, underneath the lake on the McCloud Arm, there's one of the state's first, if not the first, salmon hatchery. The McCloud River Hatchery is now underwater, and for what I understand, it was a huge stone building constructed in native stone. And if you have a modern fish finder with mapping capability, you'll actually see it marked on your map. You'll know, hey, I'm over the fish hatchery. If I remember right, it's in about 200 some feet of water when the lake's up. So that's just kind of interesting. But let's talk fishing. Let's talk cold water fishing at Shasta. And Shasta's cold water fisheries are transitioning, and usually when we say a fishery is in transition, that's a bad thing. Not at Shasta. It was good, it was great actually, but it's getting even better. We've seen an uptick in the number of browns as well as the size of the browns. These days, 4 and 5 pound browns, they're common. 6 pound browns, they're big. 9 pound browns, that's a trophy brown, but we're about to see those browns get even bigger. This year, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, they planted kokanee in the lake. They're expected to take hold, and if they do, browns are going to start feeding on those kokanee, and you're going to see double-digit browns get pretty common at the lake. Rainbow trout. Rainbows, that's a numbers fishery at Shasta, but they're getting bigger. 3 pounders are common. A 4 pounder is a nice fish. 5 and 6 pounders are possible. And when you get in on a good rainbow bite, I mean, my best session on the water, me and Gary Morales one time, we caught 35 rainbows in 2 hours. We were catching and releasing right under the I-5 bridge. Just a phenomenal trout fishery. The king salmon fishery was very good. It's backed off a little bit, but it's starting to come back. There are natural spawning kings in the lake, but there's also planted kings, and they've been playing around with planting them at various locations around the lake, so they kind of show up in different areas. So they're not in one static area. That was one of the problems before. They were all kind of concentrated down by the dam. Now they're planting them in different areas, and they're hoping that the population of kings is going to move around a little more. In terms of forage, threadfin shad, that fuels everything at Lake Shasta. It is a shad lake. And, most of the year, trout fishing is really good, but there are 2 significant slowdowns. The transition periods, when Fishing's good at a lot of lakes. It is not good at Shasta, and it's just because the lake is so large. During the spring and fall transition periods, when the water is turning over in the lake, the trout scatter. You can still catch them, but it's hard to find a concentration, and it's hard to find a pattern at those times. When you're trolling at those times, you'll catch a fish on a top line, on a needlefish, and your next fish will come 2 hours later 100 feet deep on a rapala. It's just random. You stay on the move to get the fish. That's just kind of how it is. In the later fall months, winter, early spring, and throughout the summer, the fishing is fantastic. In the cold months, the trout are up on top, work structure, find bait, and you'll find the trout in the top, 30 feet of the water column most of the time. That is a great time of the year to fish. November, December, right on through probably April. And that's when it starts to get a little tougher, when the fish start to move around a bit. In the summertime, you can enjoy really fast action. It can get epically hot up in the Redding area, but at that time of the year, the fish are locked into the thermocline. You'll spot them on your sonar, find the bait, find the marks, pound them with shad pattern lures, start out fast, then slow down, and you're going to catch all the rainbows you want. Fall and early spring is the best time to get in on the browns. Kings show up when kings show up, and no one knows about the Kokanee fishery up there. The fish were just planted. In the past, the lake was known to boot out 20-plus inch kokanee. They were concentrated down by the dam in those years, so we're just going to see what happens. Planted kokanee have a way of disappearing at some lakes. For example, they've planted them in Folsom a few years ago, and no one ever caught one. So hopes are high that kokanee fishery is going to establish itself, and within a couple years we're going to be seeing 14 and 16 inch fish, and maybe 3 years from now we're going to be seeing 20-plus inch fish, and that would just be a fantastic fishery if they can get that going again. So lures at Shasta, it's a shad lake. Rolling shad works, grubs work, tubes work, anything that represents a shad. Of course, the great Gary Morales, he invented the humdinger and cripple lure for fishing Shasta. Those are outstanding lures, as are cast masters, needlefish. All those minnow imitators will catch fish. If you want to go big, pull big stuff. If you're a troller, pull the big minnow plugs and stuff like that. You got to put in your time, but those will produce big fish, particularly in the colder months when you can work near surface structure, when you can work the big points and stuff like that. Now, Shasta's not really known as a bank fishing lake, but bank guys do get in on some good rainbow action. Of course, you got the famous Shasta fly, a marshmallow and red egg. That works. Worms work. All that stuff works. You could cast masters and crocodiles and stuff like that. Probably the best option for bank guys is to fish a 2 to 2.5 inch live minnow under a slip bobber when the water is cold. That's a dynamite approach, and that approach actually works for boaters too. If you want to fish bait out of your boat, hang a minnow under a slip bobber. Hang it anywhere from 5 to 15 feet deep when the water's cold. Look around for the fish. You're going to have to move around a little bit until you locate some fish, but once you do, you're going to catch a mixed bag of spotted bass and rainbows most likely. You might even pick up a catfish or something like that, but a live minnow, if you want to fish bait in Shasta, is really hard to beat. I've caught fish there mooching worms off of docks and stuff like that too, but that live minnow will almost always get hit by something at Shasta. They're out there. That's what they feed on. They're looking for minnows. They're looking for shad. So when they see that minnow under a bobber that can't escape, that's a pretty tempting presentation. But at its heart and soul, Shasta is a trolling lake. It's huge. It just lends itself real well to trolling, to downrigger trolling. If you've ever trolled for ocean salmon, you will prosper on Shasta. That's where I really learned to troll outside the Golden Gate, and I apply those same approaches to Shasta. I roll bait. I pull hoochies. I pull spoons and dodgers. Stuff like that. It fishes pretty much like an ocean salmon bite. Everything's scaled down, but you got predatory fish suspended on schools of bait. Sometimes those fish are suspended around structure. Sometimes they're suspended in open water. Sometimes they're deep. Sometimes they're shallow. Find the fish. Show the fish a bait fish imitation. It's usually pretty much as simple as that. So if you've never fished Shasta, I strongly suggest you get up there and get your trout on. We're coming up on a tough time of the year. October traditionally not so great at Shasta just because the fish are going to be scattered. They're locked into thermocline right now. If you get up there in the next 2 to 3 weeks, you're going to enjoy great action. But after that, things are going to shape back up in November, December, into January. And you know, one of the things I really like about it, you go out there, you go trout trolling, you decide, you know what, I've caught enough trout, or I want to try something different. Put on the bass gear. Go bass fishing. Bass fishing is just off the hook at Shasta, especially, you know, if you don't mind catching bass that are 1 to 2 pounds, you can catch spotted bass all day long, every month of the year. It's just an incredible fishery. So if you haven't been to Shasta, get up there, get your fish on. If you're a Shasta regular, just remember, we got to slow down in the trout fishing coming, but come November, it's going to be red hot. Just when the striper fishing's starting to wind down out in the delta and stuff like that, rock cod fishing's coming to an end, we've already got out and got our crabs, that's a great time to go to Shasta. The crowds are gone, the fish are still there. You'll have the whole place to yourself. You'll have big old coves where you can go in there and fish all day without seeing another boat. So, well, you might see me. I'll be out there. I'm going to be out there in my kayak and in that Duckworth. I want to do a kayak and camping trip on Shasta. I didn't get a chance to do it last year, but I'm going to make it happen this year. I'm going to throw all my backpacking gear in the kayak, and I'm just going to go paddle away, and I'm going to be out there for 3 or 4 days. Me and Lucy, eating backpacking food and having the time of our lives. Anyway, you guys have a great day. Lake Shasta, you know, the jewel of Northern California reservoir fishing. That's our destination this week. We'll be back next week with another destination. You guys have a great day. And if you're looking for fishing gear, check out the Fish Hunt Shoot store on the Fish Hunt Shoot website. We got a lot of cool stuff in there, including some Abu Garcia digital line counter reels at below retail price. So anyway, jump on it. We will catch you real soon. I'm Kel Kellogg. I got to finish the second half of my hike, and holy mackerel, I'm getting a phone call. I'll catch you guys later. Thanks, folks.